welcome back to my channel. I'm Huck. Today we are doing my April book haul. I have about 15 books to haul today, which is a bit on the larger side for a book haul for me, but I've already read about half of these, and quite a few of them I actually read in April, so you'll be seeing those in my April wrap-up. But I feel pretty good about it, that even though this is a bit of a larger haul, only about half of them are actually going onto my TBR shelf, and the rest I've already read. So feeling good about that. Anyways, as usual, we're going to start with new releases. So I have a couple of late March releases that got to me in April. The first of which is Rule of Wolves by Leigh Bardugo. This is the second book in the Nikolai duology after King of Scars. And we're following, I'm assuming, the same three characters, Nikolai, Zoya, and Nina in this book. Yeah, I don't actually know that much about this. This is one of those books that I just got it because, you know, I'm this far and this invested into this world that I don't really need to know what this book is about in order to buy it and read it. When I first got this, I was not feeling super motivated to read it because it's been like 2 years since the last book came out, so I just like don't feel the momentum to like feel the need to read it. But like many people, I have recently watched the new Netflix adaptation of Shadow and Bone and really liked it, and now I am much more excited about getting to this next book, just because I feel like I'm re-immersed and reinvested in this world, in the Grishaverse. So yeah, I am hopefully going to get to this one too. Ideally, I would love to read this in May, but there are so many books that like in the back of my mind I've been thinking, oh, I'll read that in May. So I'm not sure if that's going to happen, and this is like over 600 pages, or no, it's just 600 pages, I think. So like, it's, you know, decently chunky. We'll see. But I've gotten like reinvigorated about this. Oh, also, under the dust jacket, hold on if I can actually manage to get the dust jacket off. Like, that's so pretty. That's so great. Anyways, excited for this one. Then another March release that I had was Lost in the Neverwoods by Aiden Thomas. This is a standalone contemporary fantasy retelling of Peter Pan. So in this, our main character Wendy, when she was a child, her and her brothers disappeared, and then she was the only one who came back, and she doesn't remember anything about the time when she was gone, but she had to kind of, you know, continue on with her life, and we're catching up with her at the point when she is, I think she's just graduated high school, and kids have started disappearing again, and so everyone is wondering if this is connected to what happened to Wendy when she was a child. And then a mysterious boy who may or may not be Peter Pan appears and says that he needs her help. And she sees it as an opportunity to possibly find out what happened to her and her brothers all those years ago. Yeah, so Aiden Thomas is the same author that wrote Cemetery Boys, which was one of my favorite books last year, so that's why I was really excited to pick this one up. And then the last March release that I have is Illumination, Poetry to Light Up the Darkness by Tyler Knott Gregson. It's a poetry collection. Tyler Knott Gregson is a poet that I have really enjoyed in the past. I think I've read all of his published work, so this is his newest one. Then I have two April releases. The first one is The Widow Queen by Elżbieta, oh gosh, I should have practiced this name beforehand, Czerezinska. Elżbieta Czerezinska. Hopefully that's semi-correct. So this is historical fiction. I think it is about a Polish queen that maybe not as much is known about her, because it says like she refuses to be simply a pawn in her father's schemes. So maybe more is known about like her father and not as much about her as a person. And I think that this is one of those like historical fiction books that is kind of reimagining or fleshing out the story of a woman in history who we don't know as much about, I think, which is a premise that often like intrigues me. Like sometimes the execution can be hit or miss for me, but it's a concept that I find really interesting and kind of piques my interest, so I really wanted to try this one out. This was originally published in Polish, I believe, like a year or two ago, so the English translation just recently came out in April. So excited to get to this one also. And then the other April release that I have, hope this pile of books on my lap doesn't fall over. The other April release I have is Sister Song by Lucy Holland. So this is a standalone historical fantasy set in 6th century Britain. It is kind of a retelling of a traditional murder ballad that's called The Two Sisters or The Twa Sisters or The Cruel Sister. Like with a lot of traditional tunes, there's like a lot of name options for it. But I really enjoy the story of the two sisters. And so in this, we are following actually 3 siblings, and currently their land is being invaded by Saxons, and then they also are feeling kind of an invasion of their culture from Christianity gaining a foothold, and there's a struggle between Christianity coming into this country and gaining a foothold, and the old ways and their connection to the land, which gives this family like a certain kind of magic that helps them to protect their people and the land. So this was my most anticipated release for the first half of the year. Yeah, and I read this in April. I'll be talking about it in my wrap up. I also am going to be doing a standalone review for this, so look for that in the future. So those are all of my new releases. Then I have some other books that I got. So first up, I have some books in a series, which are the first 3 books in the Night Runner series by Lynn Flewelling. So the first book is Luck in the Shadows, the second is Stalking Darkness, and the third book is Trader's Moon. So it's a 7-book series in total, but I just wanted to get the first 3 because I'm kind of deciding as I go how invested in this series I am. So far, I'm feeling pretty neutral about it. I've already read the first 2 books. So Luck in the Shadows I read last month, and then Stalking Darkness I just read in April, so this will also be in my April wrap-up. My brain's ability to remember the word April wrap-up is just like not great today. For some reason that's always the like phrase I stumble over. Anyway, so yeah, so I'm kind of deciding how invested in this series I am. I definitely think I'm going to read the 3rd book and then decide if I want to buy the rest of the series. I also am kind of deciding if I feel like I might need to re-buy these, because I got these from thrift books, so they are used, and they look like they're in pretty good condition on the outside, but when you open them up, they are very, very old and are like actually disintegrating, especially this one. I don't know how well you can tell, but the cover is like missing chunks, like right here. And I feel like if I tried to open this to actually read it, it would just fall apart. So for right now, I am fine with these, especially because I have actually been listening to this series as audiobooks. But if I decide that I am much more invested in the series and I really do want to read them and have them on my shelves, I might end up rebuying these first 3 as new editions and then like buy the rest of the series in new editions. But yeah, because I like having the physical books so that I can like check spellings for names and like reread passages if there's something that I feel like I didn't catch in the audiobook and stuff. So I like having the physical books. But yeah, I'm going to be like deciding where I go next in terms of like buying these. Then another like series that I recently bought a chunk of is I bought the rest of the books in the Tenseret series by Nian Yang. So I think I pretty recently hauled the first book, which was The Black Tides of Heaven, and then I read that in April and immediately ordered the rest of the series so I could binge read the series. So these will also be in my April wrap-up. I think you can at least somewhat assume how I felt about them and that I enjoyed the series because I bought and binged them all in a month. So the second book is The Red Threads of Fortune. The third book is The Descent of Monsters, and the final book is The Ascent to Godhood. This series, first of all, has incredible covers. Like, I love these covers so much. And yeah, I really enjoyed this series. It is considered silk punk because it is East Asian inspired fantasy world, but they're also like developing technology. They're like just developing like guns and different kinds of explosives. It's set in this world where there is a like tyrannical dictator, and they have magic that is called the slack, and people who can manipulate the slack are called tensors, but magic is pretty much relegated to the like upper classes. And so there is a rebellion brewing among like the common people, and they are developing different kinds of technology and weaponry to help them fight against the magic users. And it's just a really interesting world, and in some of the books we are following like some of the children of the protector, and in some of them we're just seeing the story from other perspectives. This is another one that like I'm going to talk about in my wrap-up, but I'm also going to be doing a series review for this because it was just such a cool series. Then I have The Queen of the Tearling by Erica Johansson, and this cover is so beautiful. I just love this cover. And I honestly don't really know what this book is about. I've forgotten. I just know that I've been meaning to read it for a long time, and for whatever reason, I decided to finally buy it. But I think this book was really popular on BookTube maybe like 5 years ago or something. But I have also, like, I've heard a lot of people really love it, but then also I've heard some very mixed reviews. I actually think a lot of people really liked the first book, but I don't know if people liked the rest of the series. That's kind of my impression. And I've heard some like negative reviews of it, but I don't know, I've really wanted to try it for a while, and it has such a beautiful cover that you know, it does entice me. It does make me want to try it. I keep trying to like get the light to reflect on the gold because it's so pretty. Anyways, I don't really know what it's about, but I'm assuming there's a queen, and I'm gonna read it at some point, hopefully. Then I have 2 books that I a little bit regret getting, maybe. Not because I don't want to read them, but just I think I should have waited and gotten them later. Which are Miranda and Caliban by Jacqueline Carey and Starless by Jacqueline Carey. So the reason I feel like I should have waited on these is because I already have 2 unread books by Jacqueline Carey on my shelves. And usually the way I do things is that I would want to read those ones first before like getting more books from this author, just because in general I like to buy books in increments in case I decide I actually don't like an author, or I just like change my mind later about something. But now I'm going to have 4 unread books from this one author that so far I have only read 1 book by her. So these were kind of an impulse buy, but this is a fantasy retelling of The Tempest, I think, which sounds interesting. I have liked some other Shakespeare retellings, like fantasy retellings of Shakespeare stories before, so I'm intrigued by that. It seems fairly short, so I don't know how that's gonna go. And then Starless, you know, this is one of those books that every time I read the description, I think it sounds interesting and then immediately forget what it said. But I do think it says something about like gods walking among us or something like that. And it's fantasy. I don't know. It sounds interesting. I'm going to read it at some point. I know that was a really good pitch for the book. Very clear. So the last book that I have is Fireborn by Rosaria Munda. This was definitely a book that I bought because of BookTube hype. So many people have been talking about this recently because the second book recently came out, and some people were doing like promotions and stuff for it, but just, I don't know, people have been so excited about it, and the stuff that people have said about it just makes it sound so interesting. This is a book that I originally was not planning to read. It's not one that I would have picked up on my own, but just the hype has gotten to me. Usually I try to not be overly influenced by BookTube hype, but I think that this one sounds like something I might really like. So my vague understanding of what this book is about is it's a YA fantasy that's set in a world where there has already been a revolution, and they've overthrown the government, they've put a new government in place, and now they are discovering that maybe the new government is not a whole lot better than the old one. And so there's like other problems and unrest that's developing. And in this, we're following, I think, 2 characters who were from opposite sides of the first like revolution, but now are both training to be dragon riders, I think. And that's about all I know. But I know that people have been saying that the politics in this are just so well done and they love the characters, and I don't know, they just made it sound amazing. For some reason, recently, I feel like I've been reading a lot of dragon books, which is surprising to me because I don't have very strong feelings about dragons. Like, I don't dislike them. I used to be obsessed with dragons when I was a kid. But at this point in my life, like, I enjoy a good dragon story, but it's not something that like is a buzzword for me that like draws me to a story. But for whatever reason, recently I've been reading a lot of dragon books, so this will be added to the list of dragon books for me to read. All right, so those are all of the books that I got in April. If you've read any of them, let me know if you liked them, what your thoughts are, or if you want to let me know which books you are most excited to see me read. Talk to me in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye!